All right, on page 2 of the chapter 6 review, exam review, we'll look at starting with number 5. They give us a parabola to look at. They don't tell us any numbers for the equation, just that generic A and C, and they want to know what's true about A and C based on the shape of this graph. So I mentioned this in the first video if you watched that, but the A in the front tells us if the graph opens up or down. It opens up when A is positive, it opens down when A is negative. So our graph here is opening downward. That means A must be a negative number, and I can go ahead and rule out C and D, because those say that A is positive, greater than 0. C moves the graph up or down. So again, it should, normal parabolas, their vertex is at the origin. So my vertex on this parabola is right here. That's above the origin. That means it's moved up. C is positive when it's moved up and negative when it's moved down. So since this has been moved up, it should be positive with a negative A, and that makes my answer A. Oh. All right, on number 6, they want us to describe the vertex. We looked at on the last page the form of the equation that would tell us what the vertex is, and it looks like it has this general form, but you would have numbers in the place of the A and H and K normally, which is what we do here. Our A is -2, our H is actually a -3 here because we take the opposite of the sign that's in front of that number, and our K is just that 1. So our vertex would be -3, 1, the H and the K. That narrows it down to C or D. And then they ask if it's a minimum or a maximum. And that has to do with whether the graph is opening upward or downward. Normal parabolas open upward. They have an A that's greater than 0 or a positive A, and that vertex would be the lowest point on the graph, which is a minimum. If your A is negative and the parabola opens downward, then that vertex right there is the highest point that you have on this entire graph. In other words, it's a maximum. So we need to look at the third number here, the A. It's, less than 0. It's a negative number, which means this graph is flipped upside down. It's opening downward, and its vertex would be the highest point. It'd be like this second situation here. So if the vertex is the highest point on the graph, it's a maximum. All right, here we have a parabola, and they want to know what equation of these choices matches this parabola. All of these equations are in our vertex form, so if we can figure out the vertex, we should be able to match the x value up with one of these numbers and the y value with one of these numbers here. Then we can narrow it down more after that. So this vertex, I can't see exact numbers, but I know it should have a positive x value and a positive y value, maybe the same, I don't know, something like 2 and 2 or 3 and 2 would make sense. If this graph is square, it might not be square, I guess. But the point is that both of them should be positive because it's in this first quadrant. So when I look at these choices, these two look like they're positive x values, but they're not. Remember, the vertex x coordinate in this vertex form will have the opposite sign in front of it. So if I have a positive x value for my coordinate, I should have a minus sign in the front. So that rules out C, D, and E. Then we have, 3 choices. one of them has a +6, and there's no way that it could be +6. That should be like way up there to be +6. So I'm going to say that C doesn't make sense. That narrows it down to D and E with a coordinate of 1, 2, which again, since I didn't have any tick marks to look at, I was just guessing on these little tick marks there. It could have been 1 and 2. Let's show that. If it was like 1 and 2, something like that. Oh, that doesn't really. That could work. So D and E makes sense. The difference between them is their A. Both of the A's are negative, which matches the graph. It's opening downward, so that's not helpful. The other difference between the A is that one of them's a decimal and one of them's a number bigger than 1, a larger number. We haven't had this situation yet on this review, but having an A that's between 0 and 1, some sort of little fraction or decimal, it ends up making the graph look flatter than a normal parabola. Having an A that's greater than 1, or at least an absolute value of A that's greater than 1, makes the graph steeper than it would be normally. So we just need to look at this parabola and see if it looks like a steep parabola or a flat parabola. You can see the parabolas I have been drawing are pretty close to the normal shape for a parabola, and this one here looks steeper than what I've been drawing. If you compare it with that, it's like squished inward. That means that the little slopes would be steeper. So since this looks steeper, I would go with E, not D. And I checked the answer choices. That really is the correct answer. All right, that's page 2.